In the world of enterprise software, some rivalries are just business. But every once in a while, a conflict comes along it's more like a war. And that's exactly the story of PeopleSoft versus Oracle. The stage was set for one of the fiercest battles in enterprise software history. This line just perfectly captures the feeling at the turn of the millennium. The dot-com boom was changing absolutely everything. And suddenly, the world of business software, which might seem kind of boring, was the hottest battleground in all of tech.
So how did this whole thing even start? Well, to really understand the fight, you first have to understand the fighters. And this was a classic matchup, an upstart innovator taking on an established market giant.
Okay, so in one corner, you had PeopleSoft. They got their start as an HR pioneer, and they built this amazing reputation for making software that people actually liked using. They were the rising contender. And in the other corner, Oracle, the absolute giant of the database world, focused on massive scale and just total market dominance. It was David versus Goliath, plain and simple.
So what was PeopleSoft's slingshot in this whole David and Goliath story? It was a bold technical leap, one that completely changed the game. It was all about the internet revolution.
What's just incredible here is the speed of their expansion. I mean, in just a few years, they went from being that HR software company to a full-on ERP contender. When they launched PeopleSoft 8 back in 2000, they weren't just nibbling at the edges anymore. They were taking a huge bite right out of Oracle's core market.
So what made PeopleSoft 8 such a big deal? It was built on something they called pure internet architecture. Now, that sounds pretty technical, but what it meant for users was revolutionary. Instead of installing clunky, heavy software on every single computer, you could access everything through a simple web browser. For things like accounts payable, this was a game changer. It was easier to roll out, way easier to use. It was a massive strategic advantage.
And you can bet that this did not go unnoticed. PeopleSoft's innovation was a direct shot at Oracle's business. And let me tell you, the sleeping giant was about to wake up. Oracle's reaction, it was swift and it was direct. They didn't just see PeopleSoft as another competitor, they saw them as a fundamental threat to their own big plans in the applications market. So what do? They launched these super aggressive marketing campaigns and pushed their own e-business suite as the direct alternative, trying to stop PeopleSoft's momentum dead in its tracks.
But that really brought up a critical question for Oracle, a question that would define this whole next phase of the conflict. How do you defeat a rival that you just can't seem to out-innovate, especially when it comes to user experience?
And, Oracle's problem was made even worse by the fact that this wasn't just a two-horse race. The entire ERP market had become this brutal, three-way fight for dominance. In this chart just lays it out perfectly. It wasn't only Oracle versus PeopleSoft. You had this European powerhouse SAP who was a massive player too. So every single customer, every single contract was fiercely fought over between these three giants. The stakes were unbelievably high. Ultimately, PeopleSoft's success right in Oracle's own backyard basically backed them into a corner. Their marketing wasn't enough. Their own software just couldn't compete on that user-friendly experience. So they turned to a much older, much more aggressive strategy. If you can't beat them, buy them.
And that one decision set the stage for the dramatic and very hostile climax to this entire saga.
The year that changed everything in the world of ERP software was 2003. In 2003, Oracle dropped the bombshell. They launched a hostile takeover bid for PeopleSoft. Now, this wasn't just a business move. This was the culmination of years of intense rivalry, of fighting tooth and nail for every customer, and it was a fundamental clash of company cultures.
And that really just gets to the heart of the whole thing. The ERP wars weren't just about software. They were about vision. On one side, you had PeopleSoft's vision of user-focused design and web-based innovation. And on the other, you had Oracle's vision of power, scale, and market consolidation.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. When all the dust settled, was the takeover the end of a really unique era of innovation just squashed by a bigger competitor? Or was it simply business as usual in the brutal, high-stakes world of the software wars?